According to US Triathlon, the average annual household income for triathletes is $126,000. Have you ever wondered how much money an average triathlete spends on equipment, gadgets, gym memberships, recovery, and other items? How expensive is owning a bike like this? How about electronic gadgets like this? How much do you need to make in order to afford competing in triathlon? Today we're going to cover how much money you need to spend to afford one entire season of training and competing in triathlons. Before we start, little disclaimer, I'm not being sponsored by any of these brands and won't sell you anything. This is purely my research and my interest and experience that I'm sharing today. So let's dive in. A lot of people are stating that triathlon is super expensive, and after being in the sport since 2017, I thought it would be a great time to review the real cost of triathlon. Again, this is my personal view, and I'm using 2023 numbers, and I'm being brutally honest and will give you realistic numbers today. The longer you stay with the sport, the more you will end up spending. That's just a fact, and that's the natural progression that everybody is doing in the sport of triathlon. I'm going to break down my video into two parts today. The first part will be talking about pure beginner cost and how to save, and in the second half I'll be sharing my entire costs, including race signups and hotel stays for my 70.3 in Austria of last year. So let's dive in. My first triathlon bike was from Cannondale. It came with a helmet, some shoes, pedals, and yes, if you didn't know, typically pedals do not come with bike purchases. You gotta buy those separately, as well as bike fitting and bike shorts. The total cost of that package back in 2017 was about $2,000. Obviously, due to inflation and supply chain issues, the same package will cost you probably a lot more nowadays. But in my opinion, it's still a great way to get top-notch equipment as a starter package deal. And honestly, there's really no limit on what you can spend on triathlon equipment. Nowadays, for example, you can buy a top-of-the-line wetsuit from De Boer for about $1,500. I mean, isn't that mind-blowing? And of course, you will swim the full Ironman distance of 2.4 miles in under 50 minutes when your actual best time was an hour and 20. But all kidding aside, manufacturers promise you all these marginal gains by promoting their equipment. And obviously, to me at least, there's no question that bikes and other things have really advanced. Riding a carbon fiber over a steel bike has huge advantages in terms of saving time, but whether you need the latest disc wheels from Swiss side for 2300, that's really questionable in my opinion. And don't get me wrong, again, if you're competing for grabbing a slot for World Championships, or you've been in the sport for a while and you're trying really hard to hone in on every possible margin, it would probably make sense given that you're in the position to spend this much money, obviously. What I've always found hilarious is when people show up at the start line with bikes worth north of $10,000 and don't even know how to transition properly, or did not even get a professional fitting in, and eventually destroy their knees and backs. You see where I'm going with all this. On the other hand, if you don't have the legs and stamina to push a decent amount of watts, a 10 grand bike won't give you much of an advantage. That's just fact. Same thing goes with buying the latest carbon shoes, for example from Nike, for about $300. Take me for example, my best half marathon time in a 70.3 stands at an hour and 52. I know it's super world record tempo. I doubt I would have ran an hour and 40 in carbon shoes that day. It's just not possible. It simply comes down to so many variables, such as what kind of training you're doing, recovery, obviously talent, genetics, and obviously how fit you are on race day. If you're entirely new to the sport, I always say that don't go out and buy the most expensive equipment there is, given that you can't even afford it, right? There's really no baseline on what you need to spend, but I have some suggestions today that hopefully you're gonna find very helpful. I always encourage go to eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or even Craigslist, if that's still a thing in your city. It's really up to you, and look for either a used road bike and install an aero bar that you can also buy used, or simply go to a bike shop and have them install it. Let's take this bike for example. You might be able to negotiate it down further, who knows, but give it a shot. Make sure there are no cracks in the frame, check those brakes right around the block, and then if possible, have the seller give you the original receipt so you can end up bragging on how much you've saved to your friends. The bike should come with pedals, so you're also saving money there as well. Number 2, where I wouldn't try to save money is getting a professional fitting done. Because from my own experience, the saddle change that I had made a year ago had a huge impact on my comfort. You're probably looking at around $300 to $500 depending on the city and shop for a very comprehensive bike fitting, and another $100 to $150 for a saddle. It's really up to you, and what I would do is trust a bike fitter. Number 3, let's talk about maintenance and repair. Unless you crush your bike all the time, which can be preventable by riding indoors like me, but I'll make a separate video on that. You really don't have to spend too much. You can get a general tune-up done annually for about $150, which includes everything from brake, fluid, and cable check. You can simply buy lubricant for your chain and apply it yourself every now and then. Number 4, regarding bike clothes, you can find really cheap websites and order your outfit for indoor and outdoor rides. I would say you're probably looking at about $200 or less. Number 5, as far as triathlon bike shoes, I found this pair online. You might find a cheaper used pair on Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, or even Craigslist. Number 6, as far as bike computer, it's really up to you if that's something you want to purchase your first year. But for me, it was a game changer, and I was tired staring at my watch at all times and changed my wrist while riding my bike. And my computer that I've installed and sitting right on my aero bars, and the convenience is something that's why I went out and bought it. If you want to spend on a new bike computer, Garmin Edge for example, you're probably looking at a cost of $250 to $350. But again, shop around and you end up spending a fraction of that if you find something online. Let's not forget buying a pump, some spare tire kit, and spare tire for about $50. If you plan on doing your training indoors, I would highly encourage you to invest in a smart trainer. Obviously, there's a huge range anywhere from $250, $300 all the way up to $1,500. But again, and sorry for repeating, you can find them for a fraction of the cost online. So in total, given that you're a smart shopper and you looked around for an entire bike set, including a bike fit and a trainer, you're probably looking at $1,000 and $1,500. So let's quickly talk about swimming, which is obviously the first discipline and a huge portion of triathlon. It's going to be quick because this portion of triathlon is probably the least expensive one, and you won't spend nearly as much as with your bike. You need some swim shorts, some goggles, a buoy, a kickboard, some paddles, and some fins. You can get all that for about $100 to $150, quick and easy. You can also go out and buy custom fit goggles, obviously, for $80 to $120 from a company called Magic 5, or even a pair that shows your tempo inside the goggles for about $180. I don't disregard these companies. I've used Magic 5 myself and love them, but unfortunately custom goggles don't make you a better swimmer. That's fact. It all comes down to how much time you spend in the pool. So number 8, as far as running, that really depends on your preference. I love Hoka's myself, and a new pair costs you around $150. I would not buy used running shoes. This is something I would never suggest. Grab yourself a nice pair of running shoes and you'll be fine when it comes down to running. What ties into running and bike is a question whether or not you need a watch. I definitely recommend a watch and heart rate strap. Especially starting out, don't make the mistake and crush all your sessions with high intensity just because you weren't aware of your heart rate. It can also show you your watts on some watches while biking inside. And depending on the watch, it can show you your total recovery time. I use a Garmin Fenix 6 that I bought for about $800. Yes, 800. It's mind-blowing, but obviously for me, it was a game changer. It has so many amazing functions. It's definitely not on the cheap side, but you can find a really good beginner watches for about $200. And here as well, check online. You might be able to find something cheaper. And never be afraid of negotiating. I can't tell you how much I love my Garmin. It saved me a few times while being lost in a trail in Colorado since it has an integrated GPS mode. Last but not least, when it gets closer to your first triathlon, grab a wetsuit. Some companies like Sailfish, for example, they sell demo wetsuits that were used at some exhibitions. I grabbed one from them for about $250 with the original price tag of $750. I used to have a very beginner wetsuit that was very thick, and I always felt like I didn't have the range of motion in my shoulders and my upper body. With switching over to sailfish, I realized how much easier it was swimming in open water. It felt really natural and definitely didn't have any issues. I know a lot of race venues offer renting a wetsuit. I think that's a great solution, but in my top 10 video mistakes of triathletes up here in the corner, I was talking about the importance of trying the wetsuit out before race day. If you don't live by an ocean or lake, try it out in a pool. Let's sum it up. You can buy an entire line of equipment and gear for roughly, I truly think that one of the good things that came out of COVID is that a lot of people found themselves selling their equipment on various online sites, and shoppers just benefit from huge savings. I can't encourage enough to look for deals and bargain. Remember, sellers will sell quickly if you make them a legitimate offer, so giddy up. In the second part of the video, I've never actually added up the total cost of my equipment, and what I'm sharing now is my total cost including race fees, recovery tools, and physical therapy. I have a feeling it won't be cheap, but I'll probably be a bit shocked, but I've always wondered what the total amount actually is. Number one, let's talk about my bike. I bought a brand new Canyon Speedmax CF7 disc E-Tap, and I spent $5,600 including taxes and shipping. I use a bike computer from Garmin. It's the 820 Edge, and I bought it for $250 with a 30% discount. I use my pedals from Shimano Tegra. I bought them on Pro's Closet for $120. I use an Oakley helmet for $125, and my bike shoes are from Gurn, and I spent $120. My Garmin Fenix 6 I bought for $799, and something I want to say is the more you advance on your triathlon journey, the more useful. And as mentioned earlier, I love the data that you can record and analyze. It's simply amazing, and for me, it was a game changer. Since I don't have a coach, Garmin acts like one, right? I did a bike fitting that took 3 hours, and I spent $500 on that. And we've decided, and I trusted the guy that gave me the advice. I bought a different saddle based on my sit bone pressure test. On the saddle, I spent $150. Since I'm riding 100% indoor, I wanted a great indoor smart trainer and went with the Wahoo Kicker, which I paid $899 for. I won't be getting into clothing since there are a ton of options online and it's not expensive at all, so I'm gonna leave that out. I'm not using any virtual apps like Swift or Full Gas, therefore I don't have any costs associated with that. Let's dive into my international travel. So I bought a Aero Comfort 3.0 triathlon travel case for $500, and it took me a while to figure out if that's something I really need, but as it turned out, it's an amazing travel case. And because I hesitated, I did a lot more research. But when you think about it, right, you want to transport your bike efficiently without any hiccups when you open it, and you want to get it in full at your location. So the total cost for my bike, including the travel case, the trainer, the bike computer, was about $7,400. When it comes to swimming, it's obviously the least expensive buckets in triathlon, and my total cost, including arena goggles, TIR, swim package, paddles, swim shorts, fins, and a kickboard, was about $120. Speaking of swimming, my monthly gym membership for my entire family is $175. It also includes a pool. Let's talk about running quickly. I have 2 pairs of running shoes. I bought a Hoka Clifton 9 and a Hoka Gaviota 5. In total for both shoes I spent $300. Lastly, there are miscellaneous things I spend money on, such as electrolytes, some supplements, physical therapy, and recovery tools. I don't go overboard with supplements and electrolytes. I take a very generalized vitamin mix in the morning with zinc and ashwagandha root, and my electrolyte mix, which is kind of on the pricey end, I think. I spend $30 for 20 little tubes. But the cool thing with that is the sodium content is 550 milligram, and I probably buy it every 2 months. And so I probably spend about $15 a month or so on electrolytes, supplements. I'll make a separate video and we'll dive into what you really need as far as electrolytes and supplements, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and companies really push marketing, and the money machines are behind pushing these products out, and I wonder what the real effect is on the body. And as far as physical therapy, which I'm trying to avoid obviously with a lot of band exercise and stretching, I would say it's anywhere between $10 and $25 per session. Your time spent on rehab and injury prevention exercises at home correlates with how many times you need to visit a physical therapy, obviously. That's a whole nother separate topic as far as insurance and deductible, but as you can tell, my initial bike expense was quite high. I used to have a road bike that I sold prior buying my Canyon, but the electronic shifters were really something I wanted. To me, it was a game changer. Obviously, there's so many gears and gadgets available in the marketplace, and I always encourage, please do your research and figure out if that's something you really want or is that something you really need, right? The last section of this video, I want to talk about how much it costs to actually compete. Obviously, there are a few variables that you have to consider, such as whether you want to race internationally or locally or nationally. I'm going to share two options that will give you better insights into how much it costs if you have a relatively local competition or far away and you gotta hop on a plane. I competed in the state of Colorado and I flew abroad to Austria. So let's take Boulder, Colorado, for example. It's about an hour and 45-minute drive from here. They had a 70.3 and it's 180 miles round trip from me. So to be very precise, I probably need about half a tank, which runs me at around $20. So that's really, really low. I need to check my bike in the day before the race, so I have to get a hotel room or an Airbnb since I cook my own meals before a race. Hotel costs vary obviously, but I typically spend about $150 per night, which includes a kitchen. Groceries, I'm not gonna break that down since it's only dinner and breakfast. Obviously, the most expensive item of this race trip is the registration fee, which is $399. So to add everything up, you're probably looking at about $600 for a one-night stay, including race fees and food. Now, if you want to race internationally, $600 is most likely not even going to cover your flight, right? I flew to Munich last year for my 70.3 in Austria and incurred the following expenses. I spent $1,200 on the flight, which did not include the bike fee. The bike fee was separate, so I spent about $300 round trip to check my bike in. We probably spent 9 days at an Airbnb, which was $1,500 all in. We spent $300 on groceries for those 9 days, and I would say restaurants and miscellaneous items were about $500. So in total for this race, we spent $3,800. Definitely not on the cheap side, but the experience honestly I carry with me will last my lifetime. It was the most breathtaking venue I've ever raced at, besides St. George, Utah, and the race was super well organized. There's no complaints whatsoever. What I found the most amazing thing though was I was able to walk to the bike check-in and the swim start, since our Airbnb was 5 minutes away. So yeah, welcome to Europe. It was simply a blast. As you already assumed, triathlon is not a cheap sport, but I'm not of the opinion that you need to have an income of $126,000, which I mentioned at the beginning of my video. With the above examples, patience, and my savings tips, you should get a better idea of the real cost of triathlon. And that wraps up today's video. Please check out my other videos on mistakes you should be avoiding as a triathlete, and have fun training. Don't give up. Thanks for watching so long. You're Christian. Take care. Bye.